Chapter 15. Gathering. After dinner, the evening following her interview with Christie, Lydia went to the Ravenclaw common room to work. Once she had finished her homework, she sought out Oddie and Dean. Dean was still finishing his essay. Oddie was, of course, a fast worker. There were always more books to be read. Dean was not at all slow, but he had a tendency to talk, even though it was rarely clear whether Oddie was listening. As both Lydia and Oddie were exceptionally quick, it made Dean seem slow by comparison. It was an illusion. In fact, there were few others in the school, even in Ravenclaw, who could make Dean look anything other than gifted. Lydia had learned this time and again over the years she had known him. Dean was also an athlete, being a highly regarded Quidditch beater, and as faithful a friend to her as he was to Oddie. Taking these facts into account, the prospect of having him as a companion gave her confidence. Oddie was a different matter. She couldn't want his intellect and magical skills more than she already did. Perhaps that was why she felt trepidation about approaching him. He might refuse. Worse still, he might accept out of duty to Dean and Lydia, but hate and resent doing so. Oddie didn't strike her as courageous. He was a born worrier rather than a warrior. He had the knowledge and imagination to foresee more problems than even she might spot. Her heart sank at the prospect of presenting him with such a hideous choice. Once Dean had finished his work, she spoke to them. They found a quiet corner together, and Lydia used her abilities to prevent anyone from approaching or overhearing. Most of their classmates were still hard at work anyway. Dean gave her his full attention, asking only for a few points of clarification so that she didn't lose her flow. Oddie said nothing. He barely reacted, even to the points which shocked Dean. Lydia was unsettled and apprehensive about what he might say. As she reached the point at which she asked for their help and companionship, Dean spoke first. "Yeah, of course, Lyd," he nodded with vigour. "Crikey, you've been through it, haven't you? Anything I can do to help, I will. What do you think, Oddie? Bloody amazing, eh? We'll be like a new Dumbledore's army. Bunch of students taking on the forces of evil and saving the world." They both looked to Oddie. He shrugged. "Well, it's great that you're up for it, Dean. Mr. Ward signed me up a while ago, of course. Be nice not to have to keep secrets from my friends anymore." "What the actual—" an amazed Lydia began. "Ambrose," said Oddie in explanation. "We've been friends for years, since the three of us were firsties." "Bloody hell," Dean remarked. "Why am I even surprised?" Lydia asked. "That meddling old git. So he's told you everything about me and what I've been doing?" "Pretty much," Oddie admitted. "But that wasn't what was important, of course." Lydia shook her head slowly. "So have the two of you been plotting?" Oddie frowned. "He's been telling me all the things he couldn't tell you. That much should be obvious." "What?" Lydia asked. Oddie sighed. "There are things he isn't able to say to you. Information he's not allowed to pass on because the Alterworlders can stop him. You know this. I'm only spelling it out because Dean has no way of knowing." Lydia turned her head. "Are you sure it's not just because he doesn't trust me with any information?" Oddie scowled. "The things he has told you, for instance, that there are things he can't tell you, have caused him absolute agony. Literally, it has given him intense physical pain. And not being able to tell you what he would like to tell you has broken his heart, as they say. Ambrose loves you, I think against his better judgment. He hates what he's done to you, and that he'll have to send you against the Alterworld. He has no other choice, though. It's all happening sooner than he expected. Pity him, but don't hate him." It was surreal for Lydia to be lectured by Oddie on emotional issues. She looked to Dean. "That was a bit touchy-feely for you, mate." "We live in unusual times," Oddie said in a laconic tone. Lydia thought of something which raised her spirits. "So you know what we're going to have to do." "That would be nice," Oddie sighed. "But no, even Ambrose doesn't know. He's given me a lot of background, and everything he's learned from previous encounters. I have the job of working out what needs to be done once we see what they throw at us. He chose the cleverest person he could find, Lydia realised. Obviously, Oddie agreed. Lucky me. And he chose someone unlikely, so that the Alterworlders wouldn't stop him from telling me. Also, he has told you a lot, Lydia. You don't realise it yet. We'll need to work things out together. Dean smiled and chuckled. Shut up, Dean, Oddie warned. But yes, we'll be like the new Dumbledore's army. I like that suggestion. Ambrose won't really be able to tell any of us very much now, of course. The Alterworlders will stop him. It was already becoming difficult for him to tell me more. He will say things, obliquely, and we should remember them. Anything he says or has already said could prove to be useful. We just won't know until later. I can't believe you knew all this and didn't tell me, Dean said. Oddie gave him an incredulous look. Because I'm such a blabbermouth, you mean? Dean looked down. Good point. But you know we are friends, he might have said something. I gave Ambrose my word, Oddie explained, shaking his head. I'm not sure you understand how powerful Ambrose is, Dean, Lydia said. He could have prevented Oddie from saying anything. It's great that he didn't need to, because Oddie can be trusted. Secret's a secret for a reason, Oddie added. At least proper secrets are. I hope both of you will continue to keep any secrets I may have told you. So, Lydia said in conclusion, you're both in? You're willing to become companions? The boys nodded. Lydia smiled. Good. I don't have to wipe your minds or turn you into anything hideous then. I just have to give you these friendship bracelets to wear. Ambrose's orders. Oddie looked at Dean. Wiping some minds would be superfluous. Dean gave him a sardonic grin. So, how many are the companions of cheerfulness now? Freddie asked in their joint common room booth later that evening. Sophie looked at him. Cheerfulness? Freddie grimaced. I'm not allowed to say doom, so I changed it. I was just going to call it the team, because I knew you'd complain it clashes with your Quidditch mob. Sophie scowled. But cheerfulness reminds me that it isn't cheerful at all. You're being ironic. Well, if you've got any better, Freddie began. Companions, Lydia snapped. That'll do. I thought you'd already decided that, Freddie. Why do you keep having to complicate things? Anyway, there are 7 of us so far. Us 3, Corbin, Christy, Oddie and Dean. And I've got news about Oddie. Yeah, we know, Freddie chirped. Oddie's been in it longer than any of us. Ambrose told us. We haven't talked to Oddie about it, Sophie added. We didn't even talk to each other much until you knew about us. I hated the idea of going behind your back. So did Freddie. Ambrose probably stopped you talking to Oddie, Lydia noted. He wouldn't want the Alterworlders to find out they were conspiring. No, we decided it was wrong to exclude you, Freddie protested. How would you know if it was your idea or Ambrose's? He doesn't really like to interfere any more than he has to, Sophie said. Lydia raised her eyebrows. Who decides when he has to interfere? He does. Don't be too trusting. I'm not sure he deserves it. Said Freddie. It's like he thinks saving the world's important or something. Lydia fixed her stare on him. That's the point. That's what justifies him doing anything he wants. We have to remember he might decide we're expendable. Is it? Sophie began. He made me kill, Lydia hissed. They sat in silence for a moment. Lydia's face was pink. Her eyes were rimmed with red. Freddie swapped sides of the table and slid along the bench to sit beside Lydia. His arm went around her. She started to cry. He put his other arm around her and she sobbed into his shoulder. At length, Freddie said, It's going to be war, babes, like a war of the worlds. Nobody wants to get caught up in something like that, but, well, here we are. It's like Harry and Voldemort and that lot, except it's us this time. Who knows what we'll have to do, but we have to try. For everyone and everything we love. Lydia nodded, hunched and exhausted. Sophie held her hand across the table. Lydia sat up and sighed. We need one more companion minimum, she said. So I think 3 more. Too many would be hard to control. We should have a couple of extras. That brings us to 10 in all. Oddie has said he'll talk to Dev Perek. They're good friends and on each other's wavelength. Plus Oddie probably knows more about what's going on than I do. So who will you ask? Sophie prompted, jumping in before Lydia could start another rant about Ambrose. I think Fenny would be good to have on our team, Lydia murmured. We said Shona. But Shona's so sweet. It doesn't seem right. Shona's stronger and steadier than you think, Freddie said. And like we said last time, her healer's instincts bring something extra to the team. Let her surprise you. Okay, Lydia agreed. Fenny and Shona. I'll talk to them tomorrow. I suppose I'm going to have to try to get some sleep. The dreams? Sophie asked. Lydia nodded. Every night. I suppose I'm getting sleep, otherwise I wouldn't dream, but in the morning, it doesn't feel like I have. Ask Xander to help, Freddie suggested. Lydia shook her head at him in disbelief. What? Freddie shrugged. He's a magic cat. Who knows what he can do? It's worth a try. What's the worst that could happen? I hate it when people say that, Lydia scowled. It just makes me think of all the bad things that might happen. Yeah, that must be so unusual for you, Lids, Sophie grinned. The next morning at breakfast, Lydia arranged to have a chat with Shona. They decided to meet in the joint common room during their study period before lunch. Suitably intrigued, Shona agreed. Lydia also managed to speak to Fenny Fortescue on their way out of the great hall. They arranged that they would meet during the lunch break. As Lydia crossed the entrance hall on her way towards her first lesson, she saw Oddie speaking with Dev Perek. She yearned to listen in on the conversation, using her enhanced senses, but scolded herself. She didn't want to become as bad as Ambrose. At least she had some dignity. If all went well, the companions would be complete by the end of the day. As she was leaving her lesson before the study period, she jogged up to Oddie and Dean. Have you sorted out a time to talk to Dev, Oddie? She asked. Oddie beckoned to her, as she and Dean stepped into a side corridor away from the other students. It's all done, he told her. Dev's on the team and has all the facts. Lydia was astonished. How did you tell him all that this morning? Oh, it gets better, Lids, Dean said. Turns out Dev and Oddie have been in on this for ages. Not Oddie and me, Oddie and Dev. Oddie sighed. Ambrose suggested a backup. Someone he wouldn't even meet yet. He wanted someone to know what I knew in case of... well, just in case. Dev seemed a less obvious choice. Anyone wanted to get me out of the way, they'd probably assume Dean knew what I was, as Dean's my best. Hi, Lids, came Shona's voice. Are we going to the JCR now? Lydia turned and smiled at her. Yeah, I'm ready if you are. She turned to the boys. I'll see you two later. She managed not to make it sound like a threat, though Ambrose's interference continued to annoy her. That sounded as though it was getting a bit heated, Shona murmured as they set off together, tailing their other classmates. I thought I'd rescue you. Lydia grinned. Oh, they're all right. Like an old married couple sometimes. Boys. I know, said Shona. Anyway, what did you want to talk about? I'm guessing it's not gossip. You seem pretty serious at breakfast. Or is it just the exams getting to you? Lydia glanced at her. No, the exams are no problem. But it's something personal. Can we keep it until we get to the JCR? Okay, Shona agreed. Are we taking our bags, or do you want to go up to the tower and drop them off? Take them with us. It's not going to be a quick chat, so I don't want to waste any time getting started.